Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Buenas, ¿qué pasa? My name is Cisco Gallardo, and I'm your host for the Healing Generations podcast, the Elders Edition. I want to thank all our longtime listeners, all our new listeners. This episode, we focus on the elders in our community, both men and women, and those in between. But as we get going this episode, I want us to take time and acknowledge the four directions, and I'm going to share it the way I was taught. So please close your eyes, face the east, the direction of the men. I want you to think about your grandfathers, your fathers, your son, your nephews, your uncles, your cousins. I want you to think about your homies, your compadres. I want you to think about all the things that men bring to the table, what they bring in our lives, you know. Then I want you to face the west, the direction of the women. And I want you to think about the spectrum also between the men and women. Not everybody fits in a perfect position, you know. So we want to honor our relatives that way. And as we move on to think about the women in our life, our grandmothers, our mothers, our daughters, our nieces, our friends, our aunties, all the women in our life, all the things that they bring in our lives. We want to make sure we think about them and invite them into this space when we talk about healing. And then I want you to turn around to your left all the way to your face north, and I want you to think about our ancestors, our elders, and all the beauty that they bring to healing, all the beauty that they bring. We want to think about their lives, how they prayed for us. Even before they even knew us, they prayed. The wisdom that they teach us. Our elderly, pray for them, that they're not lonely, that things are good with them. I want good things for them. And then I want you to turn again to your left, to the south. I want you to think about the future generations, the children in our lives. Those that we haven't even met yet, I want you to think about them. Think about their laughter, their joy, the optimistic attitudes that they have sometimes about life. You know, that imagination, that we bring that into the space. When we talk about healing, we need to think about those things. And with that, I want us to think about the sun as well. How the sun warms us and guides us. And we know with that sun, we know there's going to be a new day every day. We just have to wake up and be ready to embrace it. And I want you to think about Mother Earth, Tonantzin, all the things that Tonantzin gives us, the water, all the animals, everything that we need to survive is right here. We need to start taking care of it. And of course, the center, the Creator, all that the Creator gives us, you know, that energy. And we want to remember that as we move forward with this healing message. I want to thank each and every one of you for acknowledging the four directions with me. We have a special episode this week. We have a special host, Ozuna-Sanchez from the National Compadres Network. And our guest for this week is Felicia Montes, affectionately known as Fe. But I want to highlight she's a poet. She's a part of a singing group called En La Quech. Always been a big fan. So Fe, can you share a little bit about yourself, your family, your background, your journey up to this point in life?
Ándale. Well, deep question and simple question a la misma vez, no? At the same time. Greetings, everyone. Beautiful to be here on such an important virtual online ofrenda, right? An online offering. These beautiful online offerings during this time of offering, that offerings are so much needed. My name is Felicia Montes Velasquez. Oftentimes I'll just say Felicia Montes. But not only because I'm in Mexico, but also I've done this. And so when I'm in circle, I usually always offer the Velázquez, which is my mother's maiden name. My mom is Olivia Montes Velázquez Rico, and my dad Carlos Montes. I come from a family of Chicano movement. And for me, it's a representation of a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Our family, both sides, come from Chihuahua, Mexico. So the montañas and the mountainsides, and also the northern part of Mexico. And so for me, it's very important to honor my family, my parents, right? Where I came from, where I was birthed from, their work and their struggle, but also that came before. My grandparents, Saturnino, Alejandro Montes, and also Bedelia, Sainz, and Raimundo Velázquez. All of those are now ancestors on the other side in the spirit world who I believe are listening right now or supporting me through a lot of the work that I do. I say I identify as Chicana Indígena and also Raramuri. Chicana Indígena representing kind of the diaspora, right, that we're in as many people of Turtle Island descent, of the Anahuaqueño descent, of learning from our traditions, but also coming from different sides of, or different parts of oftentimes Mexico, Central America, and the Americas overall. And so for me, representing my family as best as I can through this representation and through other ofrendas are usually through art and through palabra, through the word, through spoken word and through spaces. And so, yeah, as a Chicana Indígena, I'm very honored to be here today. I feel like representing Chicana Indígena means a lot. A lot of people don't understand it necessarily, or the term maybe has come over in the last maybe 10 years for different people, but I've connected it through some of my elders, Shuri Moraga and Celia Rodriguez from La Red Chicana Indígena, and others, many, many others over the years who have put in the work, not only in the ceremony, but in the streets marching or in the organizing circles and the spaces, and also on the reservations and on the Red Road, and the political organizations and the trabajos, so many different spaces. And I think that Chicana Indígena represents. And as myself, from being a child of the movement, literally born into the movement of the Chicana movement, my parents were involved in the 60s and 70s and still are involved, but very much were involved at that time. I feel like I was born into the movement, and I have like a poem that says I'm a red diaper baby Chicana feminist since birth. And that piece, that little line, reminds me that I have strong matriarchal lineage, right? Strong mujeres, strong women in my family, with my mother, my grandparents, my grandmothers, and my tias. So many of those like chingona, hardcore tias, right? Within many of our energía, when you were honoring the direction, and just thinking of, I was even getting emotional. I felt the energy when you began to think about all the different and really feel into those directions, right? I really connected with you and was like, yes, like feeling that a little bit more. But honoring those mujeres and hombres that are on both sides of my family that have been a part of a revolutionary struggle, right? Been a part of trying to identify, honor their families, honor themselves as best as they can. My parents been involved in the Brown Berets in East LA, but also in La Vida Nueva newspaper here in East Los Angeles area around Garfield and Roosevelt High School and ELAC and the walkouts in 1968, and helping to find or create Chicano studies departments. And so for me, kind of being born into that, it was always a struggle to find my path and my way, my journey, other than their very specific path and their very specific presence within the movement, and what was my path and how was I going to be different, or connect, what was my own journey. And so a lot of it for me is just like any other, teenager or person kind of finding their way, was about identity. Like, who am I other than my parents? Who am I as a quote unquote Mexican American? I already identified as Chicana early on, but just trying to find my path a little bit was definitely a path that took me on a long road. Even though my parents were so involved in the identity and cultura, it still took me a long, varied path for all of us that can still continues a little bit of my journey. Yeah, I can go on and on, but I think I'll stop there for a little bit and then continue.
No, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way of. It's like when I hear you speak, I think about what my kids are gonna say about
Mm-hmm.
being raised the way they were raised, whether they wanted to follow the path that we laid for them or not. So I do appreciate you sharing the way you do. But within that, just to give a little bit of more specific context, like understanding your journey, understanding your path in life, what are lessons that you learned being connected to your culture, from your family, from even your own personal experiences, which are connected but very much different from what your parents went through, that have helped you in your own healing and your own development. And these could come from anything from, like, say, your art. You're very connected with your art,
Mm-hmm.
the people you've been connected to through your life, and all the advocacy work you've done. So what are those lessons that really resonate with you?
I think the lessons are many, and every, minute, every other day, there's another one. Some of the different ones that I feel that came for me at a younger age were, again, trying to find my own path, different from anybody around me, different. Like, I know some people like are seen in the eyes of their older brother or sister, or, are you on the same path, whether it's a good path or don't do what they did, right? I have an older brother, but it wasn't necessarily like that for me. I think it was definitely finding my own path and making sure that, all the struggles that a young person with alcohol, drugs, finding your identity, trying to make sure that I wasn't going to go fully involved in any one way and fully get lost in that, in my quest for identity. So I think that was a big lesson, because just as any young person, right, or even now, like, I love to celebrate life and to enjoy life. And what is oftentimes seen in a lot of our culture is like the celebrations and the family celebrations, even for like 1 year olds, right? Not necessarily in my family, but have like lots of alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no things for kids oftentimes in like a 1 year old's baby. But that didn't necessarily happen in my family. But looking at that as part of our deep seated like ancestry, part of the negative part oftentimes, right? Is that myself, I really took a long path of, I think I knew early on that I had a road to fill that wasn't necessarily connected to my parents, obviously through generational, but wasn't going to be the same political one, but that there was a path and a journey that I had to fill, and that was part of kind of my own personal prophecy. Because of that, I wanted to turn left and right and make a U-turn and like do everything else that I could do before I knew I had to do that. But, and it was like a responsibility, like a femifestation, this prophecy. Again, it's not like because of your parents, but literally I feel like it's generations before, right? I have that like deep-seated kind of heart or energy that I feel that I, without, sounding egotistical, like I'm made to have done something, been a part of a journey within my circles of at least Los Angeles and East LA. And so for a long time I would be like, oh no, let me go that way, or go to a party, or, I knew about, I was involved in the Red Road, been involved in ceremony, and very early on kind of felt that that was going to be my path, and like somehow it was going to have leadership or spaces in that. But I did make some left turns and right turns, and was like, maybe in 5+ years, ya regreso, no? And that's actually literally what happened. And what I did, I think I needed to learn some life lessons. I needed to, if I'm going to be sharing these quote unquote like life lessons, whether in quote unquote ceremony or circle, I needed to have my own a little bit more, right? Having been blessed to have a family that, because they fought so hard for education, because they went underground literally, and I was born under a different name, and my parents were under a different name because of the political situation against the Chicano movement, COINTELPRO, and kind of the fight to demolish a lot of the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s. I think a lot of the coming back to who I was and to support was being able, again, to find my own identity, and knowing that I was going to do that in years. I was like, let me find my own path. And so even college, like I was able to go to college. I had a blessing and privilege to go to college, but I went to like 6 different colleges in 5 different years with like 3 different majors, right? It was like my own interdisciplinary journey, and what a beautiful journey that is. But I was finally able to graduate. But that's also a story for me to share and with young people, right? That there's no one path. You don't have to do it in 4 years. You don't have to know what you're doing as soon as you get in there. If you're even able to be blessed to be able to get right, what should be a right for all of us as education is getting to that path. And then even then, I was very involved in art and interested in art as a tool for education, empowerment, and transformation. But I couldn't find that like specific thing that I did. I was doing poetry. I was connecting with performance and cantos and through ceremony and other ways, but also what was my own way. I was always doing it for others, right? So giving of myself, which is a lot, I think, when we speak of this is the elder one, and elders in general, is that time, energy, prayers, it's always for others. And something that I've learned as a mujer in ceremony and in circles, but also just as elder in training, is that I'm remembering my own space in that, right? And my own time and that, and my own prayers and my own rest and my own learning about burnout very early, right? As an organizer, I was kind of an organizer before I became involved in ceremony and traditions, and burned out really, really quickly. And burned out like at 24. I was like, I'm done. Ya no puedo, and tired, fatigue, so much anxiety, different stuff that a lot of us felt. And so how could I take care of myself? And so one of those ways that came to be was spirituality, was prayer, was, different women's circles and spaces, and finding out eventually about herbalism and traditional ways and, curanderismo, and just looking back to my own culture and our own culture on ways that I could take care of myself and my families. Although oftentimes it wasn't very direct. That knowledge wasn't necessarily coming from my mom or even my grandmother. It had to look for elders or other elders. I had to look for ancianas and elders and traditional teachers and maestras and maestros to be able to share that. So one of the things I think they learned was that I had one of the biggest lessons in my own path specifically, right? My own journey was okay to take care of myself, even though I was always talking about the collective, whether the collective was the in La Quech, our Chicana spoken word and drum song or group, or Mujeres de Maíz after 25 years. If I was always giving to the collective and the organization of Mujeres de Maíz, then where was I? How was I going to be taken care of? How was my friends or my family or my partner or and specifically, again, what about myself? So some of the biggest lessons I think is really taking care of self. I know now it's a little bit more talked about, but that's self-care, and that, it has a term that we can use. And rest, taking care of myself, and also my own interest, right? Because if I was always putting the collective's interest, I didn't really, I always gave a space for other people to create, for other people to heal, for other people to create art, but wasn't really sharing my own art oftentimes, or my own lessons, or being able to share in my own circles oftentimes. So I had to make sure that I did that also. And I think that was some of the biggest lessons through the different groups that I've been a part of over the years.
I'm going to ask a quick little question with that.
Yeah.
And I think what I've heard from you that I think is important to highlight is the lesson of being really intentional of how you lift up your voice as a mujer and mujeres in the movement, which I don't know if that was something your mother instilled in you, or was that, how did that come about within you, which is in my way of thinking probably different from the previous generation of how they did their work. Yeah. And I would really love if you could just speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a couple of different reasons. I think the mujer focus of my work has probably come from generational inheritance, right? Like this need for the mujeres in my family and our ancestors, the mujeres ancestors of many of our generations, to finally have a voice, or to reclaim that voice after years, or to be shared in different ways. So I feel like it's deep-seated somehow in our sangre and our cuerpos, and literally in the mujeres cuerpo and a lot of our energía, and energy. And then second, I think definitely from my mom, like a strong mujer, and the mujeres in my family, right? Her mom, my abuela, all the sisters, like all my great aunts, my tias, you know, this crew of them, super crew of like mujeres that were, even if they were working in the cafeteria in East LA, were like making changes in that cafeteria, right? Like they were the movers and shakers, or like making things happen, or supporting the walkouts of their children, or whatever it was. So I think that was definitely in my blood, in our sangre, and in a lot of our generational gifts, and DNA as kind of raza, indigenous communities of the Americas and of Nahuac. So I feel like that comes from that, definitely, from my mom specifically, Olivia Montes también, having a voice, you know, writing, but also sharing in the newspaper La Vida Nueva. And also because having been able to go to college, and learning about, through books, also the Chicano movement, or videos, and straight hearing about the sexism and homophobia that happened, or even still happens. And so when we were organizing at the beginning, or when I began to organize, a lot of the work I started organizing was around Zapatismo, and learning about also the women's revolutionary laws and the women's revolution before the revolution with the Zapatistas in Chiapas, Mexico. So there was always this very strong presence and information that I was learning and being inspired by, that pushed us to say that wasn't going to happen anymore, that there was going to be balance, and energía. And so even when I was maybe organizing for things that were not related to Mujeres de Maíz or mujer centered, or like immigration reform or things like that, I realized I did not want to organize in spaces anymore that there wasn't a mujer presence, or that there wasn't a spirit presence or art. So if there was an organization, whether it was immigration reform or whatever, that was only working on immigration without talking about, like, you know, self-care or spirituality, or they weren't talking about, there wasn't a mujer in leadership, or they didn't realize the issues of the mujer, then I didn't want to organize in those circles. Like, it didn't make any sense. It was just going to burn me out. It was just going to burn. So only in spaces that had all of those things, spirituality or some kind of spirit-based work, mujer as a focus, or if not a focus, that was like leadership, and also that they understood the importance of art and cultura. So that is why I've been, you know, specifically like with Mujeres de Maíz, or at one point with UFW, or specific organizations that for a while, you know, were able to do all of that, or I was able to represent that for them, or share that energía. Porque si no, you could be at like meetings every day of the week, all day, all night right now with everything's happening in the world, right? You can be doing work nonstop, but that's not going to help us if we're not taking care of ourselves and our families too.
So I want to thank you for your response. A lot of times, you know, originally I'm from Denver, and the home of Corky Gonzalez and Jerry Gonzalez, Geraldine Gonzalez, you know, a lot of strong women. I mean, Corky's daughter was one of my mentors. You know, I went to the escuela and did all kinds of that. And I just want to take the time to say, I appreciate talking about self-care, because one of the things when I first got in the movement back in the day, a lot of the veteranos would tell me, it's like, this will take your family if you're not prepared. This will take your kids' childhoods if you don't prepare yourself and listen. And a lot of people, there was kind of a split. Those that, because of the movement and their connection to AIM, found the red road. They found either Sundance or Sweat Lodge, or they went to Native American church or danza. They found a big connection within danza. And somewhere along those things split the political kind of work with the spiritual. And even though nowadays it's a little bit of both, it's kind of mixed up, you know what I mean? But taking care of yourself is a big part of that. Being able to talk about healing, not in this hippified way, but more of a way of like, this is work. This is a part of resistance. If you want to resist against the system or against our oppression, sharing traditions as our ancestors once did, singing the songs, eating traditional foods, just being in connection with each other in a ceremonial way is important. You know, it is a part of that reflection. It is a part of of En La Quech in motion. You know, it's not just a concept or a theory, it's for real. And, you know, I appreciate the way you expressed it in that way, because the Chicano movement, in a lot of ways, I pushed the Chicano studies for, he was the Chicano studies chair for Metropolitan State University. I always used to talk about, like, what about the indigenous movement that's happening? Like, it's good we talk about the old movements, but what about these new movements? You know, we had this debate: is Mexica the new Chicano as far as the wording goes, right? How do we reclaim an indigenous identity? So tell me about what you're doing now with yourself and with others to build on those life lessons. How do you take it in this stage of your life? You know, where do you see that going, and how do you promote that in a positive way, in the healing way, and even in your own growth? Because even though as we get older, we still have to grow.
Oh,
We
definitely.
cannot be stuck in what we learned when in our 20s, or what we learned as we still have to grow and grow in tandem with future generations. It has to be in tandem, not separate, together. So anyway,
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's, I mean, a long-term journey, right? In my mid 20s, it's coming to ceremony, but also realizing that I wanted to go have fun and I didn't want that responsibility. And, you know, why do I have to have that responsibility? Even though innately I knew that eventually that was going to be my path, you know? So there was these questions, these pulls, societal pulls that come to do this, that's not so good for your body, especially as mujeres. Do this for, give of yourself, give of your time, give of your body, your physical body, give of your spirit, whether it be to alcohol drinks and just trying to find ourselves, or to cure some of those, or take away some of the pain of, 500 plus years, much less, yesterday's tears, right? So a piece of, I'm forgetting the actual words of it specifically, but it's talking about, from the pain of 1492 or from yesterday, right? Whether, and so there's that pain. I think the mujeres and our families, I'm just bringing back to that topic a little bit to be able to give a base to what I want to share in a bit right now, is that there's so much pain in our families and our generation. Obviously, we're healing generations. Like, we know this. We've felt this. We've done this. We've lived this. The mujeres, I think, overall have a whole, another kind of level. Oftentimes, as we're holding the family together. I'm not a mother, but I feel like I am a caretaker of circles and of spaces, of sacred spaces of women, and the amount of oftentimes sadness, anxiety, depression, pain that is oftentimes not necessarily even shared out loud in those circles, but is often just felt through energía, is super, super deep. Again, it can be from 500 plus years ago, or even beyond that, or from 2 hours before the circle or the space. And so many have looked to ways to, like, take care of ourselves, or to burn away or take away that energy. So now we're looking to, I feel like for myself, around 20 plus years ago, coming to be able to find ways to, instead of burning it through like a smoke or like a certain type of drug or an alcohol, right? We look to the sacred waters, or we look to the smoke of the tobacco, or the certain ways to be able to put up those prayers and to clean ourselves of that energía of the sadness, and to offer it up, right? To offer it up, whether to the fuego or to the prayers or to Grandmother Moon or the Sol, in a dance of whether it's danza or another type of dance. We're doing these things in order to offer it up and pray it up. And I think, for me, the circles of En La Quech, Mujeres de Maíz, the running and physically moving through the prayer of peace and dignity, which I did like in the year 2000, like these ways were super, super instrumental to, and literally the word I want to say elemental, right? These 4 directions that you started, and the 4 elements, to be able to say that these are our sacred elements. These are the sacred elements within you as a mujer, and these are what you can begin talking about and sharing about with other mujeres in these spaces and circles. And so to offer that, about 20 plus years ago, we started En La Quech, a poetry group where we just started words, right? It was this women's circle, but we didn't say we were going to start a women's circle. We didn't have a flyer that said Círculo de Mujeres, nada de eso. we just started to share poetry and or words. We didn't even think we were poets at the time, right? We were like, I'm not a poet, you're not a poet, we're not, but we all write, and we had all these like books that we had written a lot about our experiences, both happy, sad, emotional, political, and not so political. And we shared that. And what happened is that it was just that one person. All we needed was one person to like feel it and to be our enlaquech, to be our mirror, to be our reflection. And that literally changed what I say, sometimes changed our DNA. You know, it changed us. It changed something in us completely to be able to see another mujer in the mirror, in the espejo, in the smoking mirror, and to see that same experience happen, or to validate what we were feeling. Both positive, celebratory things, but also things that were really hurtful or sad. And so what was supposed to be just one time where we shared with Enlaquech, and somebody invited us 20 plus, actually we're about to be 24 years later.
Wow.
We're still sharing poetry and still invited to share songs. Now it's oftentimes songs on the hand drum or different ways. And then we started Mujeres de Maíz because we realized the importance of sharing palabra, of sharing word, of sharing cultura, of la cultura cura, right? Very known within this podcast, I'm sure, and through our circles and some of the listeners. But we knew that importance. We felt that importance, and we started Mujeres de Maíz. So at this time, the question is like, what are you doing like right now? What are your work? What is your journey to this point? And my work right now is within Mujeres de Maíz, but also many other spaces within educational circles at the university level, in workshops and in other spaces, a consultant with Círculo, with the Círculos and spaces, to be able to continue to talk about my journey and our journey together for healing in these different spaces. Oftentimes, again, focusing on the mujer. So whether it be, singing or art or dancing, danza azteca, or teaching a Chicano studies class, whether through ethnic studies lens or through the arts lens or spirituality lens, even having Círculo, right, through Zoom or spaces. This is like what the manifestations and femifestations of my work, and what I usually always say is our work is now, because I always feel like, even though I'm on this podcast today, I'm talking like, aquí están, Enlaquech, mis padres, Mujeres de Maíz, like all the circles, my prayer circles and spirit circles, I'm always kind of rolling deep, even though no están aquí presente visualmente, no? And that's important to me. And I think that also helps me sometimes keep me in check, hopefully, as a yelder. Keeps me in check to like, what's my next move and space? Because sometimes I do, still want to turn left or turn right. Me gusta la música y cosas así that supposedly sometimes are oftentimes connected with what is seen as not so healthy for our families, and specifically like Mexicano, Centroamericano, raza, indigenous families. And so trying to keep that balance is what's really, really what I'm continuing to focus on, because I think as a yelder also, and I don't want to be that, and I did do this for a while. When I first became sober, I felt like I was very judgmental, and like, it's a sí or a no. There's like no, like, and I felt like I was I don't feel like this way anymore. And I don't know if others thought of me with it, but I felt it was like somewhat like there was this chip. There was the generational chip on my shoulder, not necessarily from my family, but from all the pain and all the struggle, like all the stuff that I was carrying. And I'm like, pues yo, I'm sober. And so you have, I don't know. I just felt like I was kind of another person at the time, like another mad, angry, like, and there's other ways through prayer and cantos, whether that's a ranch, like a banda canto or a ceremonial canto, that I can understand the importance of both of those. Like the war cry or the grito de revolución and the grito from our Mexicano fathers or something, like, there's somehow a connection there that I'm still I'm seeing, and that I don't want to like say it's one or the other, that there's that energia, and that's where I'm always trying to find the balance. And that's where I feel a little bit more where my work is now, to really understand that it's not either or, right? We talk about this, not work with binaries anymore, but we still do in a lot of our spaces. That's good, that's bad. And, and like todo in moderation and also in balance. And we always talk about the sacred balance of the men and the women, the balance of this, the balance of that. But I felt that at least personally, I wasn't doing that in a good way or sharing it necessarily in a way that was going to be open for people to hear. And it was closing me off too in a lot of ways. So I think that is literally one of most of my recent lessons in the last kind of 3 to 5 years, the most that really keeps me in check.
Yeah, we always have to manage the dichotomies that we see and try to build the synthesis for that. What can we take from those?
So I appreciate everything you were saying earlier, Fe. When you were speaking about the music, I definitely said both have, in my head, I right away said both have their own grito. And I was definitely thinking in that way.
Good chido, wow.
But if you're talking about how that grito continues, your words are very important. Your perspective and wisdom is really necessary. What would be the counsel, advice, or the palabras that you would offer, not only to the generation coming, but to the generation that already laid the path for us? We are an intergenerational people. And I think it's important that as elders, we understand as the bridge builders, what can we give? What words can we offer to those elders? And then what words can we also offer to the next generation coming after us in order to really own our health and own our healing?
Yeah. Wow. That'll be in my next book. No, just kidding. That's a deep question. I think some of the basic things that I would say and that I feel like from what I shared a little bit today is kind of like find your own path. You might have an elder or a teacher or literally a high school older teacher, maestro, older brother, that sister who walked a certain way or did a certain something a certain way, and it doesn't have to be the way you did it. I mean, you don't have to follow exactly in their footsteps, even if you want to, because they're a good example. Like, it doesn't have to be exactly how they did it. And I think that specifically pertains a lot to ceremonial circles too. Although there are like protocols and spaces that they ask you to do certain things in certain ways. Find your path and way. Maybe it's not going to be in these certain amount of years and suddenly you're going to do this. Looking for elders, right? Or elders looking for, I remember in the year 2000, one of my biggest prayers when I ran Peace and Dignity Journeys, and for a couple of months through where my ombligo lies, 4 days before my ombligo lies, which is in El Paso, Texas. I started 4 days before that, and I went for 2 months until Teotihuacan, was for the prayer of mujeres elders in East LA, or like for representation. We maybe knew them or hadn't met them yet, or they were already there, but we hadn't connected with them yet, or at least I hadn't necessarily in that way. So that was a big prayer, like a mujer representation, mujer maestras. And that was very specific for me, running and kind of repping East LA at that time. And I put that prayer out in a big way, right? Running for it and we have many maestras now. It's not because I think we ran or whatever, but really putting it out there and many of us looking. There are many maestras. They were already probably right next to us, our moms, our parents, different people right next to us, our tias who had the herbal knowledge already or knew about limpias or whatever it is. And we didn't have to look across, very far or another state. They were next to us, but we just even uncovering that or asking the specific questions. So looking for elders or realizing sometimes it's just the people right in front of you, the parents and stuff that have all the knowledge. Looking for circles and support. So, like obviously Healing Generations, places like podcasts like this or the National Compadres Network and all the different spaces, looking for spaces and support. I know before people would look like at Girl Scouts or at least for mujeres, like some kind of space that, cheerleading, whatever it was that you could have like a círculo. It might have been because of cheerleading or música or theater or whatever it was, some kind of club at the school, or something that people could be able to like desahogar, share, have positive energy, and that was going to be moving you forward. So finding circles or creating them. And that's what we did. As in La Cacha Mujeres de Maíz, we just kept creating circles. And right now, at least with where I come from in Los Angeles, there's many, many different types of women's circles and spaces, but also just like collectives, depending on bikes or skating and everything you can think of, DJing, right? Podcasts, there's many. So there's those type of things. And in that, even though you might be very, very excited to do everything to always remember to keep rest and balance. Because a lot of us who have maybe it's the don or the work or the will or the time and energy and physical ability to do things. Sometimes we do all those things, right? And, we're really good at this and really good at this. And for whatever reason, we're doing a lot of things. And so to take the time, again, what I mentioned before, to find that balance for you, to, eat well, take care, rest, and be who you can be in a good way. But one of the things I think when talking to, which I don't really think about oftentimes, is like, what would I say, which you also asked. I feel like those are for like people coming up. And that one that maybe would be for elders is sometimes not necessarily gentle teachings, but that hugs and cariño and teachings that are con mucho corazón probably are learned very quickly versus, well, I don't know, maybe the other ones, the hard ones, are learned quickly too. But that I really feel like that's a big one. Not that I had super hardcore teachers or that are like, but I feel like I heard that a lot, and I hear that as like a somewhat of a mini trauma along the red road. And I don't feel that, but I've heard that with others. And so I think that I always see myself as sometimes it's like hardcore, like more ranchola, like even the way I look and things like that, right? I have these certain like looks that people think I'm standoffish or like mean if they don't talk to me. And then like 2 seconds later, like, oh my God, you're nothing of what I thought, like tú te ves muy cabrona or something, And so looking at me wanting to show full corazón and not wanting to have any type of like, I don't want to lead with the anger or the trauma. I want to lead with the corazón and the cariño. Y es lo que necesita yo. That's what I need. That's what I think our families and our children need. I speak for myself. And so I would love to see more of that. And I know it's because of generational trauma. I know there's like reasons behind it, but that would be a beautiful blessing to feel more. I don't want it to be all like super one love, but to like have more hugs, more cariño, more amor, entre nuestros círculos, and more compassion and understanding versus a lot of what I even held was like the judgment and other things, whether it was judgment for myself or for others. And so leading by corazón, más que nada.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Sometimes people think, that love is, we take it for granted sometimes. And sometimes in the circle, I always try to remind, and I have to be reminded that we're here because we love our people. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like we're getting a pension out of this. We're working. I mean, it'd be nice, but we're working at it because we want to make our people better. And, when I was young, I was one of those tough leaders, like that people were tough on me. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. So I appreciate those words. I appreciate your perspective because as a mujer, Yalder, there's lots of, all my main mentors that were women, and I still perpetuated some of the patriarchy, even though I had those leaders, and it takes a while to really change your mind and be, try to be just a better person, regardless of gender. Just try to be a better person and respect what we're trying to do. We're trying to make our world better and hear our voice and all those types of things. So I appreciate that. I just want to say that much. I want to give Mario a chance. Say anything before we close it up.
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to continue to co-create with people and really continue to lift up the blessings we received, but also figure out new ways of offering them to the next generation so that they could understand and carry this responsibility with maybe a lesser load than we had to, but without losing an understanding of the value of why it's important that we do it. I definitely feel that. I'm excited to be a part of this journey with all of you all, and it's something that I feel very blessed to be connected in that way. So thank you to both of you, and definitely thank you, Fe, for all you offered and just giving us a little snapshot and being here with us this afternoon.
Pues muchas gracias. Thank you for the invitation.
Anything else you want to add real quick before we close it up? Where can people find you, learn more about the Mujeres de Maíz? I've been listening to your lives, man. I feel kind of weird because I'm like, this is really geared towards mujeres, but I want to check it out. I got lots of mujeres
it's for
in my
everybody.
life.
Yeah.
But I still jam it. I still check out the Facebook. So anyway, tell me, where can people find your work?
Yeah, I'm really honored to be working in different spaces, connecting also with the NCN and mujeresdemaiz.com. We have Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat is all at Mujeres de Maíz. and my own personal one, which is Fet Eva One. And so just, sharing whatever it is. What we try and do there is also have a space, a virtual space, just like y'all, like a círculo, right? Or offer teachings in different types of ways, whether it's like a meme or a post and different things like that. So I really, really appreciate the invitation to this podcast and the other way that y'all are bringing some Tolteca and Toltec love to virtual reality, to the World Wide Web, and how many people, are really going to benefit from this, whether it's, in a few days from now or years from now when they stumble upon this and they find it in an archive somewhere, right? Or online, and they're able to hear from others. So I love that the documentation is happening on another level and that you're doing it for these teachings. So important, making it accessible, right? So thank you for your work.
These are our audio codices, we're sharing.
Exactly.
It's our audio one. So Mario, where can they find you on the internets? Where can they find you? Anything you're doing besides National Compadres Network?
I live, bleed, and sweat National Compadres Network. So on that note, I'm just happy to be a part of this work. And yeah, no, that's where you can find me. Anything that have to do with NCN. So thank you for that.
I really want to thank both of you again. It's been a pleasure. I want to remind everybody, if you haven't subscribed, please do. You can go to Apple Podcasts. You can go to Spotify. You can go to Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Please rate us. Please subscribe so you can get that episode every Tuesday when it drops. Please like us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, you can learn a lot about NCN, the National Compadres Network, at nationalcompadresnetwork.org. and our partners, brotherhoodofelders.net. Just a reminder that healed people heal people. We're going to add a little music here at the end of En La Quech. It's a group that Fez a part of. You can find them on Spotify, Apple Music. Please support them. Palabra.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.